Joined. Welcome, everybody. The first thing I would like to introduce the new board members. We have Tristan Irvin, elected December 2023 to position 16, Washington Region from Tiger to Tualatin School District. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Christy Kodke, appointed January 2024 to position 15, Washington Region from Forest Grove School District. Welcome. And Clyde Rood, appointed January 2024 to position 10 from Len Benton Lincoln Region, my region, from Lebanon Community Schools. Welcome. And we have Nancy Thomas, who might be joining us shortly online, appointed January 2024 to position 20, Washington Region from Hillsborough School District. Welcome, Nancy. And also Glenn Witcher. We have Glenn with us here. And who might be joining us online, appointed January 2024 to position 7, Clackamas Region from North Clackamas School District. And Nicole Shaw, elected January 2024 as the Oregon Rural School Board Members Caucus Representative from Condon School District. Welcome. And in addition to the new board members, I want to welcome Salam Noor, who I believe is here with us in the audience. Welcome, Salam. And Salam will be joining us tomorrow for the facilitated conversation. I really appreciate you, Salam, being here and supporting the board. If possible, take a moment sorry, that's my instructions that I need to read about what I need to do. So I would like to remind the board members and share with new board members about the name tent that you have in front of you. It's have two things that we can use it for. If you want to be recognized, you can either raise it or you just can simply put the tent vertically. That will help me know that you would like to speak or be recognized for a discussion or a motion. And feel free to put it back when you have, as soon as I introduce you or recognize you. And on that note, I want to thank Dawn. She will be keeping track as our Secretary Treasurer. I asked her for support, making sure that we know who's been raising their hand or asking to be recognized. So hopefully Dawn will keep me on track if I miss anybody accidentally. And for that, for folks who are joining us over Zoom, I would ask you as well, instead of the tent, you can raise your virtual hand or your physical hand, but virtual hand will be really preferable if you can, because it will help us see it at the top of the screen. Another thing I want to share with our new board members is at the back of the tent, we have a reminder of our operating agreements for the school, for the OSBA board. And they are high-level operating agreements. The detailed ones are available in our packets for today, and they're always available in our governance documents on the website. With that, I want to also share with you a few technical things about participating in the meeting. So number one is your microphone right here is online all the time and recording the conversations, and they're very sensitive. So if you have a private conversation, it will pick it up if they are on. Make sure they're on when you're participating, so your comments are read to the record. And I would recommend we keep them on as long as we have the meeting. In addition, this microphone, and we'll have two microphones, will be needed so folks can hear us over Zoom and we can hear each other as well. So please speak directly to the microphone. In addition, some housekeeping things. The restrooms are to this side of the room, outside to the left, so you'll find the restrooms. And if you need access to power, there is a power strip all across the table at the edge, at the corner, under your table. Now, the next thing I want to share is really how grateful I am to be here with all of you and to do this work and start this year with this team. And the hundreds of hours, if not thousands of hours spent to prepare to this work for this work cannot go unnoticed. So I want to really thank staff for helping the board and the organization preparing for it. And for that, I would love to ask staff to introduce themselves, your name and your role, and what do you do for the organization. And with that, I want to introduce Emily Nishik.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Emily Nishik, and I use she, her pronouns, and I am the acting executive director for OSBA.
I'm Haley Purcell, and I'm the Chief Legal Officer for OSBA and the Interim Deputy Executive Director.
I'm Kristen Miles, and I'm the Director of Board Development for OSBA.
Hey, everybody, Lori Sattenspiel, I'm the Director of Legislative Services for OSBA. Short timer.
Hello, my name is Michael Miller, and I'm the Interim Director of the Legal Department for OSBA.
Spencer Lewis, Director of Policy Services.
Good evening, everyone. I'm the Director of PACE. I'm Dave Harvey. Welcome to Salem.
I'm Alex Pulaski, Communications Director.
Chris Davidson, Chief Operations Officer and second short timer.
Well, we have three as well. Henry, feel free to introduce yourself.
Hey, everyone.
I'm Sharissa Gaib, and I'm the event specialist.
Linnell Trissel, the Executive Assistant.
Thank you. Thank you, team. I would like to really take just a moment to say thank you, Linnell, for putting the work and the support. She's been phenomenal supporting the board and staff. And Emily, really thank you for all what you do. So with that, I want to really thank you all for being here and welcome you. It's been a precedent where presidents at the beginning of the year share their goals, but I think it's only appropriate for me to recognize that the goals for this year is going to be driven by this board. We're going to engage in time for healing, for understanding, and for assessment of where our members and our board and our staff are and where we need to be. With that, I recognize where we are, and I'm really motivated about the transformation and the change that we can do to support our about 40 staff members who serve 545,000 students in our K-12 and community colleges and beyond. So thank you for your service and for the work. I'm asking myself and you to really center this work and all what we do. It's very fulfilling, and I look forward to it. With that, we will be taking a roll call, and I would like to ask you if you're present to say you're here. The next item on the agenda is a roll call. Craig Albright. Here. Jeffrey Crapper. Chris Cronin. Jackie Crook. Lori Denzuka. Lori Denzuka. Katrina Dowdy.
Here.
Neelam Gupta.
Here.
Linda Hamilton. Here. Chris Howitt. Chris Howitt. Tristan Ervin.
Here.
Greg Kent. Christy Katagi. Steve Lowell.
Here.
Sonia McKenzie.
Here.
Alonso Oliveros. Chrissy Wrights.
Here.
Clyde Rood. Emily Smith. Oh, Nicole Shaw.
Here.
Nancy Thomas. Nancy Thomas, Glenn Wetcher, Don Watson,
Here.
and we do have a quorum. We'll take presence of the ex officios. Samuel Abdrabbo is here. Will Cahill, Craig Hawkins, Guadalupe Martinez Zapata,
Here.
and Kim Morgan. Seeing a quorum is present, the board may conduct its business. And the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. The president would like to entertain a motion to that effect. Vice Chair.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the motion is to approve the agenda as presented, and it's been properly seconded. We'll vote by objections. So if you object to the motion, please raise your hand. Seeing there is no objections, the motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The president would like to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Jackie? And let's wait for the microphone. Oh, actually, we do have a hand, Sonia and then Jackie.
Mr. President, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Jackie? Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda?
Mr. President, I just want to express appreciation for the outstanding board reports from the staff. I know it's a lot of work to do the reports, but the reports actually represent a tremendous amount of excellent work. And I'm always really interested in reading the reports because they are so well done and show what a wide scope the OSBA has. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? So I want to echo the President-elect's notion. Staff, thank you for the reports, and I encourage board members to share those reports with their local folks in region when they ask what does OSBA does. Those reports are very valuable for me to communicate and share about the work of OSBA. Thank you very much, staff, for the work and the efforts into it. Seeing there's no further discussion on the consent agenda, we will go with the vote by objection. So if you are against this motion to approve the consolidated action, please raise your hand if you object. Seeing there is no objections, the motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the audit results. And regarding the audit results, I believe we do have a presentation. Or we don't? Yes. Yeah. Before we have the presentation, maybe Chris, would you like to make an introduction about the audit?
Yeah, so in the back of the room, we have Fierce Caddick. He was the one doing most of the field work in the office, communicating via email and whatnot. And then we have the audit partner, Fritz Duncan, from Jones and Roth. So.
All right, so we will be super brief, but if you have questions, we're happy. Want to put it to your mouth?
Sure. I'll do that. Does that work? You guys hear me? I don't have a very loud voice. Let's see. So we do 3 audits for you. You have these 2 little subsidiary audits. So we're going to summarize really briefly. You have a question?
I do have a question. I'm a little confused on this. Just a second here, backtrack. Did we approve the consent, and then it jumped all the way to the audit? So did we approve all the approval of the minutes from September 2023 until now?
Linda, do you mind if you can speak to the microphone so folks can hear you on the microphone?
Okay, we went from the consent agenda-
The other microphone as well.
Well, what is this one for, just recording?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, so I lost track here. We went from the consent agenda to the audit. So did we approve all these minutes from September the 22nd of 2023 until January to 5th of 2024?
Thank you for the question, Linda, the points of inquiry. The answer is yes. In the consent agenda, we voted on approving all the items under consent agenda.
Well, for the record, I do not abstain, because we're missing minutes from January the 7th, December the 19th on here. We had a meeting, special meeting, and I don't see that, and that's unfinished business. So could you add that?
Thank you, Linda. I will take that to the record after we finish the presentation. I'll ask how we can get it into the record. I appreciate that.
All right, let's see. So we do 3 audits for you. There's a couple little entities that you manage. One of them is called the Legal Assistance Trust. I don't know if are you guys able to bring up the financial statements? It's called Legal Assistance Trust. So while you're doing that, so you manage these 2 other audits. We audit all 3. It's literally called the Legal Assistance Trust. You're managing a trust that has reserves to pay legal expenses. That's all it's for. We did an audit of that. Those financials, we believe, are materially correct. If you flip a couple of pages, just to show you what it looks like, a couple more pages. Keep on going, a couple more. Sorry, a couple more. Oh yeah, first got it. This entity, all it does is has cash reserves and it pays legal expenses as they come up. So as of right now, you have about $2.7 million of reserves on hand. You bring in dues during the year. If the legal expenses come up, you pay them. That's what the entity does. So pretty simple, right? But you manage that. This company manages that. So there's that audit. There's not a lot to that audit. When we reviewed all 3 of these audits, if we had any difficulties in any of the audits, we would tell the group about that. We didn't have any. If we had disagreements about your financial practices, your accounting treatments, et cetera, we want to tell the group about that. We didn't have any. And if there were significant errors, we'd want to talk about that. And there were not any. So when we go through these 3 audits, you can be pretty happy that the financial systems that you're managing are in really pretty good shape. So that's the one entity. And then Fierce, if you don't mind, switch over to the other entity. You also have an entity that you're a partner with where you own some real estate, you own a building that your offices are in. And all the entity does is it has that real estate, it brings in money, it pays its expenses. You manage that entity. Well, you do an audit of it because you have a partner. Let's see. So there it is right there. Just to summarize that entity has some cash reserves. Most of it is the actual real estate, et cetera, of your offices. Just to remind people, that's cost. That's not the fair value of whatever your property is worth. So if you thought, hey, the property is worth a lot more than that, that's not in these financials. But if you look at that entity has, the $3 million of assets. It doesn't have very much debt. So you can see that's really your equity in the entity. It brings in revenue just to pay its expenses. So it's also relatively simple. So those 2 I want to hit the highlights. But if you go to the third, this entity, the parent, is a lot more complicated. I just want to hit some of the highlights. If you just go to the financial spheres. So this is an $80 million entity that you're managing. In fact, as of right now, $84 million as of June 30th. So a very large entity. And you look at how you're managing all your assets. You have a lot of liquid assets because you have your investment reserves and your cash reserves. You have $77 million of liquid assets. You have the money that entity has invested in real estate, equipment, et cetera. Just to remind people, as of last year, This audit consolidates the local government center into this financial. Used to be separate. You own more than 50% of it now, so it's in your financials. That includes that other smaller audit in here. But when you add it in there, it's still, you're managing $84 million, a lot of liquid assets, some illiquid assets. So you're in really pretty good shape from an asset standpoint. If you go down a couple lines, does this entity have hardly any debt? No, it doesn't. It has $700,000 of debt of $84 million in assets. So very little debt, which means for a nonprofit, they call equity net assets. You have $83 million of equity as of June 30th. The one difference for a nonprofit than maybe for-profits, you mark your investments up and down every year to whatever the market is. So that's the value of your portfolio as of June 30th. That's included in this number. So if you flip the page to the revenue and the expenses, this shows all the revenue of this entity. If you see the total, their total revenue, I want to point out, see how it says $6.5 million? That has an unrealized loss for this last year in it. It has to be in there. It's on its own line. That's a paper loss. If you add that back, you have $9 million in revenue. So if you looked at this and said, hey, that number looks different than what I'm used to looking at, it's because the unrealized loss is in here. It needs to be in here, but it's on its own line. So you can always add it back to see what your true revenue is. It's really important for revenue. If you look down a few lines, nonprofits call net income change in net assets. Again, this entity, if you were an outsider, you'd say, oh my gosh, they had a $2.7 million loss, and you'd be a little bit concerned, right? But that only loss is in there because of this paper loss on the portfolio. It's just a paper loss. Everything else you can see is netting to almost zero. So pretty good shape. From a cash perspective, you have your cash went down a little bit, but it, of course, it only went down $100,000 versus $2.7 million. So I want to point that out. Those are kind of the highlights. There's a lot of footnotes for this entity because it is complicated. This whole group doesn't need to read through all those. They're there if you like to read it. On any of these three entities, if you ever have questions, you can always call us. We're happy to answer them. Don't want to, take all the time up in here. But if you have questions about these three, I can answer them here. But those are kind of the highlights of how you did. Again, you're in good shape. You're doing a good job managing your financials, managing your controls, managing your assets. So questions though? It's very brief. Yes.
We're getting another one.
Thank you. I was just looking at the audit. Can you explain what the difference was between where it said program and administration on those columns?
Sure, yeah. So nonprofits, they take their expenses and they take, when you're working for the entity and you're working on your programs, they put that in their program calling. If you're just doing administration of the nonprofit, bookkeeping, et cetera, managing just a nonprofit, that's administration. So that's a key split. And what you do is you allocate your expenses versus what am I doing? So if I'm working my legal department, that's a program expense. If I'm just doing administration, that would be an administration expense. Does that help?
Thank you.
Yeah, no, really good question. Those are two key columns for a nonprofit. What you want to see is you're spending most of your expenses in program, not administration. So, and again, you're in pretty good shape there. Other questions? One more highlight, sorry. When you bought this entity, when you bought a percentage of the local government center, you bought out one of your partners, that made you consolidate this into your financials. If you were looking at your financials, you'll see there's a line called goodwill, which you would think would be strange for a nonprofit, but that's because you paid them the value of this building when they left. You paid them their fair value. There's a line called goodwill on your financials. It's new as of last year. It's in these last 2-year financials. Chris, did you have a question?
I just want to comment. Before this meeting, we had a finance committee meeting. They got a more in-depth kind of presentation on the 3 audits. So if you have also questions or just want to learn a little bit more or whatnot, Steve, Don, Emily, and Craig were all in on that meeting as well. So myself or any of them can also, give you more insight or answer other questions that you may have during the weekend and stuff as well. So yeah, they're trying to keep it 50,000 feet because we have a long agenda and a long weekend ahead of us. But we did get a lot more in depth with the finance committee on these 3 audits than what we're getting right here.
Can I show you one more number? I think you'll really like this. Ferris, can you go to the expenses? So if you picture all the things you do in this entity, you have all these services you provide, You also have a lot of expenses. Some people think expenses are negative, but for a nonprofit, they're actually positive because of your impact on the economy. You put $9 million back in the economy last year. A little bit of that is depreciation, not a cash expense, but most of it is cash. So you brought all this money in from all of your members all over the state and you rolled it back in the economy, $9 million in 1 year. So huge number. But those are all my comments.
I have one question before you go, Mr.
Fritz.
Numbers man. Okay, this audit is only till December of 2023, right? It's,
June 30th, yes.
To June 30th of 2023.
Yes,
And we're looking good.
yes.
Do you have any added staff, added positions since then?
That's a really good question. You do your
Have a good year.
financials. You do your financials on a yearly basis, and we do the audit as of that number. If things had come up between now and then, we would comment it on here. But there hasn't been anything that we need to reflect on the financials. So we only report on June 30th because you have to have a cutoff date. So there's nothing in there as of 12/31, but we're not aware of anything that would negatively impact these reports. Does that?
We just did a major contract that wouldn't impact.
It doesn't
just-
impact the financial statements. as-
Okay, it wouldn't impact.
So it
So how
impacts
about
you.
raises for our
Right,
employees?
again, impacts you now, but it doesn't change the financials. It didn't change
Okay.
your portfolio balance as of that date.
Yeah, the things you're talking about, Linda, are going to be in next year's audit because our fiscal year runs July 1 to June 30th. So they look at everything from July 1 of 22 to June 30th of 23. So that's what this audit reflects. And so then when we're done with this fiscal year as of June 30th of 2024, they'll come back again later this year, do another audit looking at everything we've done this year. So that'll reflect any changes in positions, changes in contracts, raises, all those kinds of things.
Did your last audit include raises for staff?
The financials include everything you paid out through June 30th. So I don't remember if you had raises, but if they
Do
were
we
in
have any
payroll.
raises?
Yeah, it was 2% I think is what it was, or 3%. 3% last year and 3% this year, I think is what we did. Yeah, so that audit would reflect that.
3%.
Yes.
Government is doing better.
Excellent. Other questions? All right. Oh, we got it? Oh, okay. Well, thank you, everybody. And big, huge Chris, and then you guys saw, there's Pierce over there. They, of course, do all the work. Thanks to them. It's great doing your audit the last few years. All right, well, I guess that's it. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and thanks for the auditors and for Chris. Appreciate your diligent work on this. Audits help us ensure the integrity of our financials and really appreciate this clean report. With that, the chair welcomes a motion, and there is a motion, a suggested motion on your packet. Is there any member who would wish to make a motion? President-elect?
Mr. President, I move to accept the audit results as presented by Jones and Roth PC.
Thank you. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Secretary Treasurer Watson. There has been a motion to accept the audit's results as presented by Jones and Roth PC and properly seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing there is no further discussion, no discussion on the motion, we will go for a vote by objections. So if you object to the motion, please raise your hand or say I object. Seeing there is no objections, the motion to accept of the audit results as presented by Jones and Roth PC passes unanimously. Thank you. And back again to Chris. We do have proposed revisions to OSBA investment guidelines that has been recommended by the Finance Committee. And we may have a presentation about the guidelines that are proposed. Chris, would you like to speak to those?
and Dawn can jump into. So basically, we've had a number of conversations both in the finance committee and in amongst this group about how do we incorporate ESG into our investing strategies. ESG for new folks is environmental, social governance. How, environmentally friendly is a company? How socially just are they in their practices and how they do? How diverse is their board? Those kinds of things. And so we've spent a lot of time discussing how we incorporate that into how we invest, trying to be responsible, but yet still be fiscally responsible for the organization as well, because we rely on the investments for almost 50% of our operating budget. So we added a single paragraph to the investment guideline that more or less says we will ESG score every investment that we are looking at. We added the word mission. So I think it says vision and goals right now. We added the word mission, vision, and goals at the finance committee. So the one being brought forth for approval says mission, vision, and goals. So we look at those, how the investment applies to there as well. And then we make a decision on doing the investment. It does say that we may still take and make a low scoring ESG investment, because again, at the end of the day, we still have to do what's fiscally best for the organization because we are so financially reliant on these investments. So there may be a time when, you're going to get 8% on a low scoring ESG investment and we just can't turn it down. But we will definitely scrutinize each investment from an ESG perspective. Brent gives us kind of a rundown of his thoughts and what he knows about the company, and then we make a decision on whether to go forward with that investment or not. So that's the change being put forth before you, is to add that paragraph about ESG into the guideline with the additional word mission for mission, vision, and goals. And we hope to have your approval. I mean, we've already been kind of operating on this line for the last few months since we knew this was coming and in process. So Brent, every time he's looked to buy a new bond or buy a new stock, has kind of given us a little ESG rundown prior to actually making the purchase and getting our approval. So we've actually already put this into practice. It's just not officially in the guideline. So that's what we're asking tonight, is for it to be officially put into the guideline.
I'll ask the Secretary Treasurer to make a motion on behalf of the committee, since on your packets, you can see the amendment to the investment guidelines. But also the committee, after you receive the packets, has a recommendation to add the word mission to the sentence that goes or that ends how investment fits within OSBA's mission, vision, and goals. So in order to reflect that, I would like to ask the Secretary Treasurer to make a motion on behalf of the committee with the amendments that the committee recommended.
Okay, I'll try. I move the board approve the proposed revisions to the OSBA investment guidelines as presented with the additional changes of mission in there.
Technically, a committee motion does not require a second. So with that, we'll open it up for discussion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Linda?
I've never seen it done that way, where you request or ask someone to give a motion. Now, it's my understanding it's about before the board is shared, the information is shared, and we make a motion. So you ask the person to make a motion, they make the motion, then you say it doesn't need a second. What's our purpose for being here?
I thank you for the point of inquiry. So the presiding officer may recognize, especially when a committee recommends a guideline, that the committee chair or the representative on behalf of the committee move forward those changes. And since you heard an addition of a word, I thought it is proper to make sure the board considers that recommendation first. However, thank you for the question. It is the prerogative of the board to deliberate on this motion as it see fits. And if there is a change to that motion, we can vote this down and have a different motion. So absolutely, this motion now is on the floor proper. However, it is a prerogative of the full board to consider it and have an alternative motions or ideas if it's may see fit within the subject we're speaking to. Do you find the answer fulfilling to your points of inquiry?
I just never had a motion without a second.
We can-
So, and you said, she made the motion and you said we didn't need a second.
We
I've never
can-
seen it done this way.
The chair entertains a second. There's no problem with that. A second will not hurt. So, all right, then we are in discussion. Then we are in discussion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Linda? You're good? Yes, but do you have discussion as well?
But I was just confused. I never had.
Let's speak to the microphone.
I'm sorry, I was just confused. You asked her to make the motion. I never had anyone on the board that I sit on ask someone to make a motion. You entertain a motion and someone second. And then once she made the motion, you said you didn't need a second one. You didn't need a second because she was on the committee. I just never seen it that way. That's all. I was asking for.
Thank you.
clarification.
I thank you for the point. I believe as a determination of the chair, committee recommendations come and they can be made as a motion that does not require a second, to my understanding of Robert's Rules of Order. If anybody objects, I will entertain that. Is there any objection of that ruling? Seeing there's no objection, we will entertain the motion without a second. Is that okay? Yeah, I'm referring Robert's. Could you speak to the microphone, please?
What I'm saying is when you refer to Robert's ruling, you have to quote where that is in the Robert's ruling. If there's some, if you want to educate me, that I know it's true to the fact, other than me trusting Don, who put the motion out there, that you can do a motion and not have a second.
So I would
Just
like.
tell me where it is in the Robert's ruling.
Absolutely. I would like to entertain two possible paths. We can recess for a few minutes to find the answer, or the board can object to my ruling right now. That doesn't require a second, and we can move on with a motion and a second from any board member.
No.
Hey, Sammy, can I just second so we can move past this?
We could just go forward.
Vince- All right, thank
For
you.
the sake of time, go forward.
All right. thank you so
I'll
much.
ask for it. Go forward.
And I'll make sure we communicate if it is in the Robert's Rules or not. Thank you. All right. Is there any discussion on the motion? Katrina?
Oh, no, Sammy, I was saying I'd be happy to second so we can move past this. I've never seen this board engaged in so much parliamentary discussion. So thank you for leading, and I'd love to proceed.
Thank you. Point taken. Is there any further discussion? Seeing there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against the motion? Seeing all the votes are in the aye affirmative, the motion passes. The motion to adopt the ESG guidelines as proposed by the committee passes unanimously. Now, we will go back to the point made by the member about the minutes. And Linda, before I go back to your points, I want to clarify something. Thank you. You pointed that in the agenda cover page or in the agenda description, there is an agenda item called approval of minutes December 9, 2023. This is a clerical error. It is actually December 19th, 2023. And in your packet, the page 22 reflects correctly that the meeting is December 19th, 2023. So seeing it is a clerical error for December 19th on the agenda cover page only, and the minutes are properly documented, there's no need to change that. So I just want to note that for the record. It's only a clerical error on the page 1 of the packets which describes the agenda. That should be December 19th instead of December 9. That being said, I want to go back to Linda. Could you clarify your question, or does this answer your question?
Well, that's a area that's corrected, but if I recall, there were unfinished business. So what happened when you adjourn a meeting, just end the meeting, and that's unfinished business? It usually go over to the next meeting.
Thank you. So I appreciate that inquiry, and I would like to, maybe if you are okay with it, we can postpone it to the item on the agenda regarding proposed guidelines for agenda items. So there is some improvements proposed to the board that we will be discussing today regarding how the board will tackle agenda items, and if agenda items are requested, how we move forward with those. So thank you for the question. Seeing the minutes, seeing this question is not related to the minutes themselves, but the agenda items. If you don't have an objection, we'll move forward and have that discussion with proposed guidelines. Thank you very much. Appreciate the inquiry. The next business in front of the board is OSBA Board of Directors and Executive Director Operating Agreement. So in the packet, you'll find OSBA and Executive Director Operating Agreements. It was readopted in January 20th, 2023. If I'm not mistaken, we do revise and review and readopt those at the beginning of every year. Similar to what we may have in our local boards, these guidelines help us conduct business among ourselves and how we work with our executive director. So I would like us to have a moment to review those guidelines and working agreements. As I mentioned earlier today, that there is a high-level summary of them in our tents as a reminder for us. But these operating agreements are very valuable as we conduct our business during the board meetings and also in between board meetings in order to be an effective board. So with that, I would like to ask if there is any motion or any questions before we go to the motion. And there is a motion, sample motion on your packet to for the board to reapprove the OSBA Board of Directors and Executive Operating Agreements as presented. Greg?
Board reapprove the OSBA Board of Directors and Executive Director Operating Agreements as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I think Emily got it first.
Oh, okay, not a problem.
It's been moved by Greg and a second by Emily. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing there is no discussion on the motion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Anyone against? Say nay. Seeing all the votes are in the affirmative, the motion to reapprove the OSBA Board of Directors and Executive Director Operating Agreements as presented is approved unanimously. Next business on the agenda is signatory authorization for nonprofit corporation. There is a motion, a sample motion on your packet. The chair entertains a motion.
Good thing I'm close to the microphone. Mr. Chair, I moved the board authorize OSBA President Samuel Abdraba and OSBA Executive Director Emily Nishik to sign necessary nonprofit corporation filings with the Secretary of State and the IRS.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Linda, please wait for the microphone.
Oh my gosh. That's a lot of motions and approve and move forward in here. And if we're not careful, a lot of things will get slugged by us. I'm confused. What is this nonprofit corporation? I thought we already had done something like that in the past.
Thank
So
you.
it's going into incorporation now, right? So I'm a little, I thought we were a 501c3. But there's more to it. I know because I taught. Okay.
So we are a quasi-governmental agency and we have to do Secretary of State filings every year. And because our officers change annually, one of the filings is a change of officers and stuff. And there has to be a signatory on those forms with the Secretary of State. So that's what this is doing, is authorizing, since we've had turnover in all of these positions,
Yes, that's understandable.
some of these folks to make those signatures when necessary.
Got you. Thank you. That explained it. This doesn't.
Yeah, a lot of this that we're doing right now is just the annual turnover of leadership in January. So it is a lot of just passing motions.
And Greg?
Yes, I'd like a little bit of clarification. We have a motion that states OSBA President and OSBA Executive Director, and yet we have an acting Executive Director. Do we need to modify this motion to have it as acting director, or is it okay to leave it the way it is?
I believe it's okay to amend it or amend it. So would you like to make that motion to amend?
Sure, I'd like to make the motion to amend it to read, I move the board to authorize OSBA President Sammy Abdabra and OSBA Acting Executive Director Emily Nishik to sign necessary nonprofit corporation filings with the Secretary of State and IRS.
All right, so now this is an amendment. We're gonna vote on the amendment. The added of the word. Is there a second?
I second.
It's been seconded by Director Steve Lowell. So now there is an amendment and we're going to discuss adding the word only. That's the amendment on the floor. Is there any discussion? Seeing there's no discussion, is there any objection for the amendment of the word? Seeing there is no objection, the amendment passes. So now we're back to an amended motion that reads as, I move the board authorize OSBA President Samuel Abdrabbo and acting OSBA Executive Director Emily Nishik to sign necessary nonprofit corporation filings with the Secretary of State and IRS. For the motion on the floor, the amended motion on the floor, is there any discussion? Seeing there is no discussion, we'll enter into a vote. Is there any objections on the amended motion? Seeing there's no objections, the motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the proposed guidelines placing items on the board agenda. I want to start by saying the proposed guidelines to place items on the board agenda is, in my view, really great improvements and transparency around how board members, individual board members and officers can move agenda items and how that is deliberated and decided on for board meetings. And I really want to acknowledge the work and effort that has been going into developing those guidelines. I believe it's been months in the working, and I am really motivated to see what the discussion will look like and for the board to consider this motion. So maybe is there any staff inputs about the guidelines?
No, I will just add that we started this process in, I believe, August as the executive committee, and the executive committee directed at the time Jim Green and Linnell to kind of draft the guidelines. We brought it back to the executive committee. We had a really good discussion, and then this is the final draft that they have put forward for the board to consider. I will just say that for me as acting executive director, it's helpful to have some clarity on process and to be able to support you all in making sure that everybody has the ability to be heard and get their items that they would like to discuss on the agenda, and just the clarity for staff would be really appreciated, I think.
Thank you, Emily. So it is on your page 188 on your packet. Recommend you bookmark it or save it. It's really great guideline if the board decides to approve it. Really appreciate the efforts of the executive committee and those who worked on it. So thank you for it. And with that, I would like to entertain any questions. Seeing there's no questions,
I had one quick question.
Katrina?
My only question, and I'm sorry if this is ignorant of me and maybe I should know, is for example, my board has a set date that is a meeting for agenda planning. And so I see in point number 2 that it says 2 weeks prior to the agenda planning. Is there a consistent, like the third Monday is when we have that meeting, so that we can have a little more detail on what that specific date looks like? Or is that something I should already know?
Thank you for the very good question. I don't know if I have an answer, but I'll defer to staff, or maybe we'll get back to you.
I think in theory that would be really helpful, but I think in practice, just over the last couple of months, we've had a lot of meetings that have been special meetings. And so I think having it be that prescriptive might be a little bit challenging unless we clarified that it was for a regular scheduled board meeting only that people could put items on. Otherwise, I think that the 2 weeks, if we don't know that a meeting is scheduled and we don't have that regular cadence, that could be a little bit challenging.
Thank you. I guess I was just wondering how one would know what 2 weeks prior to agenda planning is. And if we don't know right now, that's okay. Thank you.
Actually, I'll defer to the executive assistant for an answer.
They're posted on the OSBA webpage.
Thank you, Linnell. Appreciate it. So we do post on the OSBA webpage the agenda planning sessions.
Wonderful. Thank you.
The meetings. Chris?
I think I just want to clarify that it isn't the agenda planning sessions that are posted on the website.
It's
It's
the
the-
executive committee.
Yeah.
That does the agenda planning, and
Yes.
those meetings
The
are
exe-
posted on the website.
The executive
My
committee
apologies.
meetings are posted. So it's not the actual, there's not a designation of agenda planning session. It's the executive committee that meets before the regular meetings.
Thank you, Chris. So just to reiterate, one of the duties of the executive committee is to set the agenda for the full board, and within regularly scheduled executive committee meetings, we do the executive committee does consider agenda items and approves those agenda items for the full board for their next meeting. And I believe we have the full year scheduled for the executive committee. And thank you for Chris's notes. We made sure it's consistent, so you will see it's consistently scheduled as well. And just as a reminder for those who don't know, executive committee meetings are met and are held in public. So board members are welcome to attend as well and observe. So one more thing I want to add. Actually, Linda, do you have a question, or do you feel that question is?
We could send agendas in early, right?
Oh,
If
yes.
you have an item you want to send in before the 2 weeks because you don't remember the 2 weeks, she can send it in early. and
Correct.
To you. Okay.
Correct. You can send it either to me or to the executive director anytime, all the way until 2 weeks. And thank you. And to that note, I want to note the last sentence is that there is no assurance that an item will be placed on any particular meeting agenda. And it is kind of a safeguard in case staff or the executive committee have a prerogative of elevating an agenda item over the other. And the board's time is limited. Really, executive committee and the executive director may end up needing to make the difficult decision to prioritize agenda items that are on the dockets. So I just want to make sure I highlight that as a note in the proposed agreement. Yes, Craig. Oh, sorry, Craig. Sorry.
Perhaps we need to modify item 2 here by just adding, the agenda planning at the, following executive committee meeting. And that way for future ayes, that's a little more clear.
Thank you. So you're suggesting that if I hear the suggestion on item 2, prior to the agenda planning sessions at the executive committee meetings. Perfect. Thank you. Really great discussion, comment, and I want to ask, yes, Don, sorry.
I had a question. I wanted some clarification actually on the very last sentence that you just spoke about. If I sent in an agenda to the executive committee, I know this is kind of ironic because I'm there, but if I did, and it wasn't on it didn't make it because of other reasons, would I have to send it in again for the next meeting, or would it automatically okay, I just wanted clarification on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So to answer the question, thank you for the question. To answer the question, you need to submit it once, and it will be in the list of future agenda items for the executive committee to consider and frequently prioritize accordingly, according to the business and the limitations of the board time. So does that answer the question?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sharing that answer as a best practice. It's not stipulated here, but definitely you can rest assured you don't need to send it every quarter or every meeting.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, Linnell has a running list of agenda items that happen at different times of the year, and then we're just constantly adding to that. So she moves stuff around accordingly.
Greg.
Okay, yeah, and on our local board, we have this issue sometimes that comes up, and people say, well, I asked for something to be put on the agenda and I just never heard anything. So hearing back from the committee saying, yes, it will be on the next one or not on the next one, and here's the reason why. Some questions you asked need to be vetted. We have some time that we have to talk to the people involved or the contractor or whatever it is. Sometimes it takes a lot longer to do that. So you don't always see it the very next one. And there are some reasons behind that. But it would be nice if the executive committee could relay that and say, nope, we're not going to be able to make it this time, perhaps next month when we have more time. But for transparency anyway, and for satisfaction of somebody who brings up an agenda item, it would be nice to have it go down that way as well.
Thank you. Point taken. Thank you, Greg. Any other questions? Want to give everybody an opportunity for any questions on the topic. All right. So Craig, for your suggestion, I would like to propose 2 possibilities. I think it's really important to change for clarity. Do you recommend a motion, or would you like to have that point considered and brought back to the board after we consider the agenda guideline as we have it now?
I think maybe to get this done, I guess probably a motion to amend, to add.
What's the motion?
The executive committee language to the end of the request.
Could you read the sentence as
Yeah,
it will read?
so I would move that we modify the sentence, the OSBA regional representative shall forward the request. Oh, wait, wrong one. Sorry. OSBA staff may propose items for inclusion in a board meeting agenda and will submit these requests to the executive director in writing via email at least 2 weeks prior to the agenda planning meeting at the executive committee meeting.
Thank you. And I'm really sorry. I'm going to have you to say that one more time for a reason. Since a motion has not been made yet, you can make an original motion to adopt the whole document with the change of, and then add the change, because I'm sorry, we did not have initial motion.
So I would make a motion that we adopt the guideline for placing items on the board agenda with the following addition. And that would be that OSBA staff may propose for inclusion in a board meeting agenda and will submit these requests to the executive director in writing or via email at least 2 weeks prior to the agenda planning meeting at the executive committee meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Next time, I'm gonna ask you to write the motion before you say it. This time, it's been moved, the board approved the proposed guidelines placing items on the board agenda with the addition of the word meeting at the executive committee meeting at the end of the second bullet point of paragraph 2. Is there any discussion on the motion? Thanks. Linnell, are you satisfied for the record keeping? There's a thumbs up. All right, any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seen there is no further discussion. The board will enter into a vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All those in favor, against the motion, say nay. Seeing there's all votes in the affirmative, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And I just want to make a note, this is really great progress for our board, for being able to have individual board members being able to see how the process work and have it really formalized. So really appreciate the work and the board deliberation on it. Now, the next item on the agenda, yes. Sorry, Mr. Crapper. For what reason would you like to be recognized?
Sorry, point of clarification. I got confused on the agenda item, and so I just want to make sure. One of our agenda items was, sorry, I have 2 screens in this, but thank you, was the Board of Directors, Executive Director Operating Agreements.
Yes.
But the document that is associated with that on the agenda is actually the board operating agreements and not the executive. So that's what I'm trying to confuse. So we went through that one, but did we just bypass our board operating agreements? Because when you look at the agenda and in the bookmarks, it's connected.
Thank you for the question, and we'll go to this. I will open this item if there's no objection for discussion. So I believe Jeff is, if I'm not mistaken, the board operating agreements and board and executive director operating agreements are 2 interchangeable titles for OSBA. We use the same documents, and it includes at the tail end of it the role and expectations of the the expectations of the executive director, and there is some references to the executive director in all other items. So to answer the question, it is both terminologies are for the same document on page 181, I believe.
Okay, well, I apologize. I had questions about the board operating agreements, and so I didn't see, when you look at the agenda, it's there's 2 that have the 5 or 7, sorry. There's a 7 for signatory authorization, but then there's also a 7 for OSBA operating agreements. So are we going to discuss that too? Because I know we did discuss our agreements with Emily, but we didn't discuss the operating agreements amongst ourselves, which is on the agenda, and it's actually in page. Oh my gosh, this PDF is huge. Where's the page number on this? It looks like 217.
So if you don't mind, to make sure I know exactly which one you're pointing at, could you share which Roman letter agenda item you would like to reopen?
Well, on the PDF document, you have 2 Roman numeral 7s, right? Is that what I see there? Because it's 7 OSBA operating agreements and 7 signatory authorization for nonprofit, because they're both 7s. So you have 2 number 7s. So that's where I was confused. And so when I'm looking at the PDF bookmarks,
Not on the one I have.
Well, it's.
Oh, on the electronic bookmark
Electronic.
instead.
So yeah, there's two sevens. So we discussed the one between our agreements with Emily, but did I miss our discussion about our agreements with each other?
It's the same document.
Okay, I would like to bring that up because on the electronic one, you have two agenda items with the same Roman numeral.
Okay, absolutely, point taken, and I would like to ask if you would be interested in a motion. And maybe this is the time where we can pull our laminated paper for a possible motion, which is so would the member like to reopen discussion on a matter that has been already decided?
Correct. Yeah, just as a point of clarity, because on the electronic version, the numbers were wrong, and so I missed that. So that's a clarification. I'm not asking for special privileges, but the electronic version has two number sevens. So I saw that and I was like, we didn't discuss that number 7.
Okay, yes, and absolutely, if you believe you would like to discuss it, and I want to really encourage the board that since there is a technical error in the bookmark, possibly, I'll allow for a motion. Yes, Jackie? Wait for the microphone, please.
We're gonna know Robert's rules of order here. The motion needs to be to reconsider. Since we believe that we were all, so it's just, Jeff, the motion is to reconsider number 7 operating agreement.
Thank you, thank you, Jackie. Actually, as a matter of fact, if I may propose 2 options for Jeff. The motion to reconsider will open the votes. The motion to discuss an item has been decided will open discussion. And if you're satisfied with the discussion, we may move on without a vote. If you're not satisfied with the discussion, you would like to open the vote, then we will be reconsidering. So I want to give you both options to choose from.
Whatever is the easiest and timeless. I just like to go because I was waiting to talk about that. And so when we missed it,
Just to clarify, I just want to double check. It wasn't necessarily missed because the document is the combination of the board of directors and the executive director operating agreements. So it is the combination of all of those. So it wasn't missed, but we do want to readdress it. Is that correct?
Thank you, Katrina. Please raise your hand so I can recognize you if that's okay. And I acknowledge we're working in 2 platforms. So if you don't mind, raise your hand and I'll recognize you. But first I want to answer Jeff's question or motion, and then we'll move to Katrina.
I would like to move at least to have the discussion about, and on our board agreements, due to the fact that there was 2 Roman numeral 7s on the electronic bookmarks.
Okay.
Did I do that correctly?
Is there a second to reopen the discussion on a matter that has been considered? It's been seconded. So now, Katrina, do you have a privileged motion or would you like us to proceed with the discussion?
I am fine with proceeding with the discussion. I was more asking a clarification that this item was on the agenda and wasn't missed because it is a collaborative agreement. So the president did not miss an item. The agreement is collaborative of both the board of directors and executive director, addressing both bodies, both individuals and the board collaboratively in this singular document.
Point of information is well taken. Now we'll go back to the motion, which is to explain it in layman terms. Does the board want to talk about this subject again? Is there any objection to talk about this subject again? So is there any objection to the motion that has been shared? Seeing there's no objection, we will rediscuss the agenda item number 7, which is 6 on our paperback, on the PDF itself or on the agenda itself, which is OSBA Board of Directors and Executive Director Operating Agreements on your packets, which is, and Jeff, if you may help me out, that is on page
217.
217. 1 minute just to make sure everybody. have to- 1 minute to open it on my end and 180. 181 if you have a paper or if you're looking at the pages at the bottom. Is that the same one where the bottom says
Yes.
181?
I don't have, it says 217 on mine. Is that? Okay, that's the same as I have up on the screen, right? Yeah, sorry, my screen says 217, so, yeah, it looks like on this one, it's 181. I just downloaded the one that was on Board Book, so.
And
yeah.
we have a question on the chat, but please, if you have a question in the chat, raise your hand so we can see it and
Oh,
address
she
it.
said it's on page 220. For some reason on the PDF, it's changing the page numbers.
Okay.
So that's why it's getting really confusing. So yes.
So just we were all on the same page. We're discussing board of directors and executive director operating agreements. The 3Z readopted January 20th, 2023, and we adopted them in an action recently. Jeff, would you like to start the discussion?
Well, I guess I would like a clarification, because as we know that the past 2 months have been challenging. When does these board agreements become a policy violation? And if there is a policy violation, because I know that the executive committee acted on one, pseudo on my behalf, how does that work to a point where there's a notification of me? Because I'm looking at these board agreements and we're assuming positive intent, disagree respectfully, no surprises. But then when I am notified that on Instagram, there is a post that says, simply raising Black children does not absolve you from being, referring to me, part of a hurtful system, nor did those children or my children sign up to be used as part of my white guilt bargaining chips. But then when I look at with that being posted on Instagram about my family, I look at policy 2600 that says using social media to threaten physical violence against employees, members, or volunteers, harass such individuals based on their race, their color, their religion, their sex, sexual orientation, national, ethnic origin, marital status, age, mental or physical disability, pregnancy, familiar status, economic status, veteran status, or any other protected status under applicable law. It seems there's a kind of a confusion because either my kids, my Black kids are my white guilt bargaining chips, which either would be referring to myself as my race or my kid's race as being Black. And when that's posted by a board member on Instagram with their official title, that seems like it could be kind of both of these. And so when there is a violation like of a policy and the executive acts on my behalf and make sure that post is removed, I guess I was kind of disappointed that I wasn't told sooner, but then at the same point, that seems like when does the enforcement of board agreements become a policy, I guess? How do these two coincide with one another? Because it would be helpful for me because it seems to be coming up a lot.
Thank you, Jeff. I see Greg is raising his card for recognition. For what reason you would like to be recognized?
Yes, for the question here of having two number sevens, they're entirely two different number sevens. If you look at the top of this operating agreement, that comes up under OSBA Board of Directors and Executive Director Operating Agreements Action. That's Roman numeral 6. Under 6, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 under number 6. Then you have the number 7, which is the signatory one. So that clarifies that 1 through 7 is under Roman numeral action item number 6, and Roman numeral 7 action item is entirely separate. So the two 7s are not in conjunction with one another.
Thank you, Greg. Point taken that the packet reflects agenda item 6, agenda item 7. However, there's 2 consecutive 7s. One is the content of the board operating agreement, and then following it immediately, the, thank you, point taken. Any further discussion? So, Jeff, thank you for the question. The question is taken, and I will ask for your indulgence that the executive committee or staff will provide feedback on the question. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the matter? Right. Linda, for what reason would you like to be recognized?
This was a pretty interesting question. In my world, you can only sanction or discipline, which nobody can discipline anybody at this board or make them do anything. So if someone is violating this agreement, a working agreement, how can you hold them accountable? I mean, this is an education piece for us all. So you say you're going to provide feedback to him, but I suggest it be provided to the whole board, because this is an education piece for everyone. Because what do happen when you violate these agreements? It reminds people that there are consequences for your actions. We're not government employee, but just my experience. There are consequences for your actions. And it's education for us all. And we all on OSBA boards. So in this situation, to eliminate what Jackie brought up in the past, like, liability if you violate the complaint, or whether we can be sued. So we have to be educated, everybody, a board member, or what are the consequences for your actions and what we're here to serve for. So
Thank you, Linda. I appreciate the
you.
suggestion, and I will move with, is there anybody?
No, from the corner of my eye, it looked like someone had raised their hand.
Okay, so if there's no objection, oh, sorry, Chris?
Mr. President, may I respond to Linda's comments?
You may, but also, if you don't mind, I'll share a suggestion that we may move forward with, and then you may respond
All right,
after.
go ahead.
So I would have a suggestion that's the question from Jeff regarding, and I'll summarize the question, but I believe it's noted and recorded specifically. If there is any violation for the working agreements, what are the recourse or path forward? And specifically, there was a question around social media posts specific to that. Please. Wait for a microphone, please.
I also have my 7th grade PE teacher voice, so I can do that too. But the one thing I was going to say is it was the agreements, but also the policy. So I think those are 2 separate, right? And that was my other clarification. So there's so the social media and the post about my kid's race and my race would have been a policy, not a board agreement. And the other one, but the board agreements are kind of like the 30,000 foot view. So I guess that's my question, is when what are the consequences, but also like, is there, if someone posts something about my race or one of those protective classes on social media, like if I was a victim of a crime, like I get some sort of notification, but on this one I didn't until several weeks after. So I guess my question is like, it would be awesome to know the technicalities of when the board agreement is operated, but then also when a policy is violated, what are the kind of mechanics of that? Because it doesn't say this anywhere, and it would be really helpful.
Thank you.
And as a recipient of that too, then if someone posts something about social media and about my family, then what recourse do I have being the victim of that situation? So that would be just great information to have. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate the question. I want to capture that question and say we'll work on sharing an answer. And my suggestion would be, after we conclude this discussion, is we move probably with communication with the full board in light of Linda's suggestion. So it is really informational and educational for all of us. And I will refer that since the question entailed both a possible application to the working agreements we voted on, and also for policy 2600 social media board of directors, I will ask staff to render an opinion or information regarding both that policy and the working agreements. If it's been violated, what's recourse or what actions may be taken. With that suggestion,
Yeah, I was just going to agree that we will provide that information to the board. Good question, thank you. And we will get back with the board after we've had a chance to think it through and really provide the right information.
Sorry for next.
It's okay. So that's being said, this is a suggestion from me, and since staff time is for the full board, I have to say something, which is there any objection for the suggestion I just shared that the board will be provided with information to answer the questions that were shared by board member Jeffrey Crapper? Is there any objection? So we will. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the item that was reopened or reconsidered? Okay, just for the record, we have adopted the working agreements already, and we will provide answers to the questions that the board member have shared. All right, next item on the agenda is the acting executive director update.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just wanted to take a moment and I'll go quick because I know we still have a long night ahead of us. But I just wanted to update you all on some changes that have happened along with the staffing changes. So for me stepping into the acting role, that obviously meant that I needed a deputy. So Haley has already introduced herself, but she will be stepping in as the Chief Legal Officer, keeping her original title, and acting Deputy Executive Director. Along with that, we've kind of restructured a little bit on the director team. So she'll also be overseeing board development directly and the policy team because all of those are so closely interconnected. And then in general, just really supporting me and the board. So she will be taking on the direct staff support for the governance committee and supporting Spencer on the policy committee as well as the executive committee. So really kind of taking on a broader role. And part of that was just looking at my skill set, and Haley is a very skilled attorney in the work that she does for all of the school districts in the state. And so really felt like it was a good fit for my own skill set and what we're going through right now. In addition to that, Michael Miller stepped into the interim director of legal services role. So he'll be leading that team. And we'll also be bringing on a new lead team position for the legal department so that Haley's time, even if we all go back to our original positions, will be freed up more to do more of the internal legal support for OSBA. I think that that's really important that the board have that level of support. We're a really big board and statewide, and we're growing. We added a new board member this year with the rural caucus. And so really feeling like that level of support, you all deserve that, and would like to continue to do that. So we'll bring on a kind of a supervisor for the pre-loss attorneys, and that will be a permanent position. We won't backfill, it's just elevating one person on the team who will take on the supervisory duties. In addition to that, with Chris leaving us in June as the COO, in looking at really the needs of the team, when I very first came on, I met with every single team member and heard their needs and desires and wants for OSBA. And something that came through really loud and clear was the need for a really comprehensive, updated human resources department. And so we'll be moving with a director of people operations role. We'll split Chris's role into a director of finance and member services and bring on a people operations role, really looking at employee engagement, retention, recruitment, and everything that we need to do to be able to invest in our employees so that they want to stay with us long-term, feel supported in their roles, so ultimately they can support the membership. So that's something that I'm really excited to be able to bring to the team. I think it will really help with on the retention side of things, which, as you know, is also a big cost to an organization if we do have high employee turnover. So that's a big focus of us that we will be hiring for in the next, we're hoping to get that posted at the end of, or the beginning of next month. In addition to that, for the board training for all of our new board members. We had a plan for January to be your onboarding session, but with all of the changes to the agenda and just needing to spend time as a board with Salam tomorrow, we've decided to move that training program to February. So you'll be hearing from Linnell on a day that we will set aside just for board training. And we are going to strongly encourage that all of the board attend that. We have a lot of new board members that maybe didn't go through a formal training process. And so also is another opportunity for you all to connect, to get to know one another. We had a lot of board members that came on this summer that didn't get fully onboarded. And so we have a pretty robust training program that we will be delivering during that time. It'll include public meeting law. It'll include ethics training in addition to specific training about OSBA and the work that we do here too. With that, I'll turn it back to Sammy.
Thank you, Emily. I want to, before I entertain discussion or questions for Emily on her updates, thank you, Emily. You've been a steadfast leader and you've done tremendous work for the organization. Appreciate you sacrificing your family time and your time for this organization. And please take a moment after this meeting to really thank her for her service for this organization and for stepping up during these difficult times. Very grateful that we have Emily supporting staff and supporting this organization. Thank you, Emily. Any discussion, Linda? And is there anyone else? And then Don. Linda?
Oh, I feel like I'm running a meeting tonight. Anyways, I know that these, some of the positions that, yes, hired and all that, that's good. What about the communications team? Is there any, I know some people's left there. And the people that are leaving, like Chris, have anybody had a conversation on what can we do to keep you here? Lori, what can we do to keep you here? What can we do to contract with you? Maybe bring back, but not full-time contracting, saves money. But one of the retention is asking the peoples we have, what can we do to keep you here? Is there, and communication team, I know Rachel left. Rachel was, I'm sorry, I do have my favorites. But there's a couple of people left from the communications team, I think.
Yeah, so we have recently we went with a contractor for Rachel's position, Lionel, who's our social media contractor. And then we did just recently fill Aaron's position, which was the communications assistant role. We're in the process of filling a board specialist role with Steve leaving and Kristen being promoted up. We need to backfill her position. With Lori's been wanting to leave for a long time, and I believe firmly that you should also let people retire when they're ready. So I think she'll.
I said contract. That's
we're talking, but yes. So I think that we're looking at all of the options. I do think that, with social media and Lionel doing that, and we're testing that to see if it works or if we need to bring that back in-house. My approach is really trying to figure out not necessarily what we've always done, but keeping what's really good and improving on that. And I think that trying to build out the people operations role to put those systems in place to be able to really evaluate the workflow of the team is going to be really important before we make big changes.
Thank you, Emily. Up next is Don.
Okay, I have like a two-part question, so I might be three parts, sorry. So I want to know the difference between like a director and a chair. And I know that some departments have several employees, and I can see why there's a director, like the legal department has several, and some departments only have a few. And so being on the finance committee and knowing like the finance piece, is there like, I guess I'm trying to figure out in my head how director and chair and how the salary and paying and all of that for someone that has 5 employees versus someone that maybe has 1, maybe they're their only person. So that's what I'm kind of, when you said split Chris's role, and so this is like part 4, sorry. When you said split Chris's role, then if you have HR and finance, I'm thinking there's probably gonna be one or two in finance and maybe one or in HR, so could we save money and do director chairs instead of directors? I mean, I'm just asking, sorry, that was a lot of questions.
No, it's okay. It will be finance and member services. So Sharissa, the events team, some of that work that goes behind the scenes, operations. We didn't want to have two operations titles though, because it's confusing. But that team also, Megan's stepping into a new role where it does a lot of the back end work with the updating the members and all of the communications. So splitting the role, it's downgrading one role. And then I think for where we are in our development of our sort of human resources and people operations, I went back and forth on it. And I think that it's really important. We need systems and processes in place that require someone who has a lot of experience to do that right now. I don't know that it always has to be at that level, but I think right now where we are and where the culture of work is, that is such a crucial role in being able to support and retain employees. And it's much beyond what it used to be of like paperwork and processing through, but it's really the employee experience and making sure that they are engaged in the work. And I think as we see generational shifts, it's becoming even more important. So that was where we landed on.
Just for clarification, so a director would have more experience than a chair would for the department? Is that?
I'm not familiar with the chair.
Well, because I thought I heard you say something.
Probably talking about our manager level, because that would be like for us, like Bryce is a manager. Yeah, so I think
I thought you used the word chair, but I could have wrote it down wrong. Oh my gosh, the secretary writing it down wrong, bad thing, but, but yeah, I was think department head, maybe department head. And so I was just kind of clarifying that just to, try to be equal and just trying to understand it all. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Steve Law?
So are we following the budget? I'm also on the finance committee.
I believe strongly that you have to invest in your employees and that we are losing money to be with the retention. And so I think that I've talked with Chris and that we've not filled quite a few positions prior to me coming on. And so we do have some room there with the budget. I think there's also a lot of outstanding budget issues right now that are yet to be determined with where we are right now.
Thank you. Next up is Linda. Wait for the microphone, please.
I just want to comment that in September, we emotionally had some discussion around employees' well-being and employees needing help. And workload kills employees. I'm just going to be straight. They kill them. I mean, you can have a stroke coming to the job. You can have a stroke sitting in your chair. So we talked about these employees in the workload, and I want to reiterate that employees have retention is very important. But your employees, you're only going to get the productivity out of them if they're mentally, mindset, well-being taken care of. And so I always, I'm not a union person, but not right now. But your employees, if they're honestly, you should always reach out to them and ask them what do they need, please. What do they need? How can we help? Because these employees have been filling 2-3 positions. That was really discussed, and I want to make sure we keep what we got. I don't like new faces, to be honest.
Well, I'm have to follow up that with Linda. We like new and old faces alike. Really. All right. So any other discussion? Any other discussion? Emily, I want to end this conversation the way we started it. Thank you very much for you and staff for the tireless work you all do on behalf of our members and for our members and kids. It's truly, truly an important work that our state needs and our schools need. And we're very thankful for the mindful leadership taking care of our people so they can take care of the people of Oregon and our kids. So with that, if there's no further discussion, we will enter to an executive session and we do have some language. Beautiful. So the OSBA Board of Directors will now enter executive session. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192-660, Section 2, subsection F, to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. And I'll allow staff to leave before I continue. OSBA staff members, Emily Nishik and Haley Purcell, and OSBA Board Legal Counsel, Michael Porter and Bob Steringer, shall be allowed to remain in the room during executive session. Members of the media are permitted to attend. However, media are not permitted to disclose information discussed in the executive session. All other staff and members of the public will be excused to the waiting room. No discussion, no decisions will be made in the executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome staff and members of the public back into the meeting room. The meeting recording can be paused at this time.